Hello everyone, welcome to the PMP exam question and answers practice session. So just like the previous months, we would be solving 5 medium to high difficulty level PMP exam style questions today in this video. And for each of the 5 questions, we would be doing a detailed explanation on the correct and the incorrect answer choices. The intent of this exercise is firstly to test how well you are prepared for the PMP exam. So for example, you can use this scorecard that you see on screen to test your performance across the 5 questions. And secondly, the goal of this exercise is to develop your understanding on the correct process and strategy for solving PMP exam questions efficiently. So please give this video a like and let's get started with question number 1.
Right, so question number 1 guys, the drill will remain the same as per the previous monthly Q&A sessions. Please pause the video and try to answer it before we solve this together. Okay, so let's get started. A project deliverable fails to meet the required quality standards and it is rejected by the customer. Now, upon investigation, the project team discovers that the issue originated from defective components supplied by a vendor. The vendor has stated that they are unable to resolve the problem. Okay. Now, the problem that has happened in this scenario is sort of a deliverable which was created by the contractor or the vendor as part of the project. It didn't meet the quality standards, and that of course resulted in defect components. Now what the contractor or the vendor is saying that, look, this is what was agreed and I have delivered this. Now I will not be able to resolve the problem. Okay. Of course, there is a conflict of expectations here. Okay. Now, before determining the appropriate course of action, what document should the project manager consult? So let's look at the options one by one. Option A, the agreement outlining the vendor's service level expectations. Okay, possibly. So you might argue that, okay, the service level expectations will sort of delineate the quality standards, what the contractor is supposed to deliver, etc., etc. We will argue in terms of whether that line of reasoning is correct or not. So let's hold this option for now. Let's look at option B, the procurement strategy and the contractual terms with the vendor. Okay, this is also a plausible option because the contractual terms with the vendor and the procurement strategy also provide some kind of information, right? And some kind of baseline with respect to the project management plan on how the contractor is supposed to work, what are the deliverables, etc., etc. Okay, so option B is also a plausible option, right? So let's hold option B as well. Let's look at option C, the internal documentation from quality assurance evaluations. Now we can reject this option at this point in time, okay? Because the internal documentation from quality evaluations might not give you anything new because it has already been rejected by the customer, and it is unlikely that your quality assurance department will say something different, okay? So it is a bit pointless to refer to documentation from internal quality assurance evaluations when the customer is outrightly rejecting your deliverable. Okay, so option C is definitely incorrect. Let's look at option D, the plan for delineating how project resources are allocated and managed. This is quite extraneous, right? So I don't think any of you have selected option D because it is quite sort of goes in a different tangent, right? So the most plausible answer options are either option A and option B. Now from this point onwards, to evaluate which is the correct answer choice, you need to understand what is a procurement strategy, what is a contractual term, vis-a-vis what is an SLA or what is a service level expectation. Okay. Now going back to the basics of project management here, guys, procurement strategy or contractual terms with a procurement vendor is the what. Okay, so what they are supposed to deliver. It is at the very, very core of your project, and in terms of the specifications, the success criteria, quality standards, in terms of any regulatory requirements, etc., etc., everything is captured in the contractual terms with the contractor or the vendor. Okay, now SLA is very, very different. Okay, because SLA is about how will the contractor deliver it. Okay, what will be the service level expectation? You have defined the what with your procurement strategy, with your contractual terms, and now you are defining that how will the contractor deliver it. Okay, so for example, things like after there is a scope communication which has been provided to the contractor, within 5 days they need to respond back. Okay, let's say for example, if a delivery order is placed, within 14 working days the delivery needs to happen. Okay, another example of SLA could be that whenever a delivery comes, it should have sort of a checklist or a quality assurance document supporting the delivery of the product or the service. Okay, so it is a very, very core difference which you need to understand with respect to what is an SLA and what is a contractual term or a procurement strategy. Okay, now if you go back to the original question, the problem is at the very core of the what. Okay, the problem does not have the element of how in the situation or in the scenario that has been provided. Okay, so that is why option B is the correct answer choice here, because your procurement strategy and your contractual terms with the vendor will actually delineate what are the required quality standards, what has been documented as part of your procurement management plan, what was the expectation from the contractor in terms of the success metrics of the deliverable. And then you can compare and say that, okay, whether the contractor is actually telling the truth or whether the customer is asking something as a gold plating with respect to what was initially not aligned. Okay, and the customer can also be wrong sometimes. Okay, it is not always true that the customer is always correct. Okay, so then you need to coach and educate the customer as well. So those kind of informations will be the part of your procurement strategy and contractual terms, not a part of your SLA. So the correct answer to this question is option B. Option A is a very close answer choice, but it's an incorrect answer choice.
Now, if you are preparing for the PMP exam, I would suggest that you check out my PMP exam preparation courses on Udemy. All the courses are very highly rated amongst the students, and many PMP exam aspirants have passed their PMP exams with the help of these courses. You can check the reviews on Udemy, and all the relevant links will be provided in the description section of this video. And now, let's move on to question number 2.
Okay, so question number 2, guys, the drill will remain the same. Please read the question and try to answer it before we solve this together. You can pause the video here if you wish to. Okay, so let's get started. A project team collaborates with an international contractor located in a country with 3 official languages. Okay. Although all team members are multilingual and meetings are conducted in a shared language, some contractors switch to another language, which is probably their local language, during work sessions, which is very, very natural and very normal as well. Okay. So when the project manager addresses this behavior in a team meeting, the contractors apologize but explain that using their preferred language, which is their common language or the local language, helps them to work more efficiently. How should the project manager handle this situation? Okay, so interesting scenario, and let's try to go through the 4 options A, B, C, and D. So let's evaluate the 4 options one by one and take it from there. Okay, so option A, enforce a rule requiring the use of single language at all times, even if it reduces efficiency. Of course, no one in their correct frame of mind would go with this option, right? You can't basically do this, that okay, you mandate a single language. It's against diversity and inclusion policies as well. Okay, so A is definitely incorrect. Let's look at option B. Report the matter to Human Resources Department as a formal issue. Unnecessary escalation. Okay, no one should be doing that, and of course, as a project manager, you should not report these kind of issues to Human Resources Department, which is a bit extraneous as well. Okay, I hope none of you have selected this option. Let's look at option C. Arrange official training on using translation tools or services. This is a bit of a overkill, guys. Okay, because arranging official training, translation tools, getting a translator for project related purposes, I don't know, it's a huge overkill, right? So probably this option is not also correct, and that leaves us with option D. Let's look at option D. Encourage the team to collaboratively establish communication guidelines and language norms, which is sort of the only plausible option. It is sort of a balanced option as well, because because you are establishing a collaborative atmosphere and you are sort of giving some communication guidelines. So for example, you might say that, okay, during the meetings where you have people from different ethnicities or different groups, probably English might be a common language understood by everyone. And outside meetings, if you are having like small huddle meetings or sort of small focus group discussions, you can use their own they can use their own local language. Okay, so that can be some of the language norms which you can document and sort of deploy as a project manager in this situation. Okay, so option A is incorrect, B is incorrect, C is definitely incorrect, and the correct answer to this question is option D. This was fairly an easy one, and I think most of you have got this correct, right?
Now, before we move on to question number 3, guys, I would like to introduce you to my PMP exam study group on YouTube. It's a monthly subscription based membership model, and you will get daily posts on highly nuanced tips and tricks to prepare for your PMP exam, which are generally not discussed on my YouTube videos. You can try it out for a few months and cancel anytime if you wish. Feedback from students for this study group has been excellent.
So question number 3, guys, please pause the video, read the question and try to answer it before we solve this together. Okay, so let's get started. Multiple tasks continue to accumulate in the sprint's backlog. Impediment status despite the Scrum team's continuous effort to resolve them. Okay, so tasks are creeping up and it's accumulating in the backlog of a particular sprint despite the Scrum team's continuous effort to resolve the same. Now the sprint retrospective identifies that all the roadblocks originate from a specific product owner's lack of engagement. So this is the person who is not engaging with the sprint or with the team or with the project, and that is the reason why things are not going as per plan. Previously, the Scrum Master has attempted to coach this individual, but they continue to demonstrate non-collaborative behavior. So it's a difficult person to deal with in this situation. So what should the project manager do next? Okay, so let's look at the options one by one. Option A, request the product owner supervisor to provide financial reimbursement corresponding to the sprint delays caused by insufficient stakeholder participation. Okay, this is preposterous, right? You can't ask for these kind of financial reimbursements or penalties within an organization. I hope none of you have selected this answer choice because it is against basic decorum of a matured project management organization, right? It might happen in sort of a mom and pop situation. However, in a standard professional project management environment, you cannot really ask for financial reimbursements. Let's look at option B. Conduct stakeholder mapping to locate a supportive senior executive, okay, who can influence the product owner. Possible, you can sort of do a stakeholder mapping exercise, probably check your stakeholder register and find a supportive senior executive who can influence the product owner. Might be their functional manager, might be their HR manager, basically an escalation. And time and again, I keep on referring across this Q&A sessions that escalation is the last resort to do Okay, however, please keep in mind that if there is a need to escalate and there is a need to influence, you should do it. Okay, however, influence is basically not an escalation. Okay, so you are not escalating to your project sponsor, right? You are trying to ask for help, and influence is not equivalent to escalation. Okay, I hope you understand that. So it is asking for help needed where you are sort of not able to create an influence yourself because maybe the person is at your level and you need someone above your hierarchy to influence that person. Okay, so B looks like a possible answer choice. However, let's look at option C. Direct the development team to discover alternative stakeholders capable of circumventing the product owner's obstruction. Again, this is something which ideally you should not do. If you circumvent the product owner's obstruction and try to do it yourself, then again, you are not being able to make that role or that person accountable, and you can't sort of bypass a product owner and start taking decisions yourself just because your product owner is not getting engaged. Okay, because otherwise you are filling the shoes of the product owner and you are filling the shoes of the project manager, which might be a conflict of interest as well, right? So that is why option C is incorrect. Let's look at option D. Develop a stakeholder communication matrix categorizing participants based on their demonstrated commitment to project success. Again, unnecessary documentation and intellectualization, let's say. So developing a stakeholder communication matrix, categorizing participants. Okay, you can do that exercise, spend 1.5 hours getting this done, but what good will it do? Okay, you will have a nice fancy document ready, but will it drive any decisions, or will it drive any sort of solution to the problem that you are facing now? Or will it drive any solution to the problem that you are facing now? Questionable, right? So probably that is also not the correct answer choice. So the correct answer to this question is option B, which is to conduct stakeholder mapping to locate a supportive senior executive who can influence the product owner. And this is a positive influence you are trying to do. Asking for help needed. Do not mistake this for escalation, because typically you are not escalating here, because generally escalation happens with the project sponsor or project executive. You are asking for help in terms of influencing positively, which is not a bad thing. Okay, so the correct answer to this question is option B.
And now let's move on to question number 4.
Okay, so question number 4, guys. Please read the question and try to answer it before we solve this together. Again, you can pause the video here if you wish to as well. Okay, so let's get started. The annual performance metrics indicate that rival organizations are reducing service costs significantly for a business. Okay, so the enterprise is experiencing client attrition during the execution phase of a software implementation initiative, and it becomes evident that the funding department will not achieve adequate return on their capital allocation. So because of this client attritions, a project which is midway, which is in the execution stage, they are forecasting at this point in time, it has not happened actually, but it's a forecast that the funding department will not achieve adequate rate of return on their capital allocation. Which 2 actions should the project manager do to adapt the project to these new conditions? And you have to choose 2 options. So in your PMP exam, for these kind of questions, you will always be provided with the number of options you need to choose from the 5 or 6 options, or let's say 4 options that will be provided to you. Okay. Right. So let's start evaluating the options one by one. Option A, gradually substitute internal resources with offshore consulting professionals who can deliver services at 50% reduced compensation rates or lower. Okay, so this is incorrect, guys, because firstly, during the execution stage of the project, doing this replacement at this point in time might call for a lot of complexities in terms of contracting, in terms of the way your procurement contracts or procurement management plans are designed. So that is the first part of it. And secondly, even if they are giving 50% reduced compensation rates, there is nowhere it is stated in the question that the problem, or let's say the high cost which the project is facing at the moment, is due to people resources, or let's say due to service or due to labor, right? So what if the high cost which the project is currently facing is probably due to some new cybersecurity regulations, or let's say due to some kind of software or hardware infrastructure which they have built. So people, of course, is one part of it. However, it is not stated in the question that the current project is facing any problems, or let's say high cost, due to people only, right? And people is not the only parameter that influences the cost of the project, right? So that is why option A is incorrect, because it is giving a very myopic view of how you can reduce cost, which may not be your root cause. Okay, so let's look at option B. Modify the project scope to provide equivalent functionality as the competition to align with their cost structure. Again, it is just like trying to catch a missed bus, right? So now modifying the project scope, it will call for a lot of change management procedures which you need to do, and you are just sort of copying the competition. Again, are you providing value for your customers with this sort of strategy, right? So that is also something which ideally should not be done, and that is why option B is also incorrect. Let's look at option C. Conduct a value engineering assessment of project components, okay, very important, to maximize delivery efficiency and accelerate timeline. This is what probably is one of the correct options, because value engineering means that you look at all the aspects of the project, not only people, but you look at infrastructure, you look at fixed costs, variable costs, direct costs, indirect costs. So you look at all the aspects of your costs and do a value engineering assessment of what is the Pareto, or your 80-20 of your high cost footfall of your project, right? So what is that 20% of your project components that is driving 80% of your project costs? Okay. So that is sort of a value engineering exercise, and you do not only focus on people, you focus on multiple aspects. So that is why option C seems to be the correct answer choice, or one of the correct answer choices, because the question is mentioning that you need to choose two answer choices for this question. So let's look at option D. Compress the remaining project phases to complete the original deliverables while minimizing indirect expenses. Again, a myopic view, right? Because what about the direct expense? What about the fixed cost? What about the variable cost? So same problem as option A for this option as well. So that is why option D is also incorrect. Now let's look at option E. Establish an iterative delivery approach to progressively optimize business value within the allocated financial constraints. So basically it is saying that you follow sort of a prototype approach or sort of a iterative / incremental delivery approach to progressively optimize business value. Then again, it is a different way of saying that you need to do a value exercise within the allocated financial constraints. So option E also seems to be the correct answer choice to this question. So the correct answer to the question is option C, which is suggesting to conduct a value engineering assessment for the project components to maximize delivery. And option E, which is to establish sort of an agile track for the project to progressively optimize business value. So the correct answer to this question is option C and option E.
And finally, let's move on to question number 5. Remember, the target is to get all the 5 out of the 5 questions correct, okay? However, the minimum expectation is that you will get at least 4 out of the 5 questions correct to consider yourself fairly well prepared for your PMP exam. You can assess your level of preparation according to this scorecard. So here comes question number 5.
So the fifth and the final question, guys, please read the question, pause the video and try to answer it before we solve this together. Okay, so let's get started. The marketing department of a financial services company enthusiastically approved the development team's mid-project demo of a mobile banking app for elderly customers. However, the final product was considered unusable because of font sizes were too small for users with vision impairments to read the account information clearly. Typical scenario where there is a product feature mismatch with the end users. So what should the project manager do to avoid this kind of failure in the future? So the key word here is in the future. The question is not asking about what should the project manager do now to salvage the situation, but very important for you to note that it is asking for preventive measure, which is sort of a learn from experience that will be a good learning point for this project manager or any other project manager who is doing a similar project at a future date. Okay, so let's look at the options one by one. Option A, engage directly with the customer service department that handles end client support requests. Again, this is a very, very broad option, guys. Support requests could be anything under the sun. That doesn't necessarily mean that this will solve this issue of a small text size, which is considered a challenge for elderly customers with vision impairments. Okay. So option A is definitely incorrect. Let's look at option B. Ensure that all the app releases include configurable font sizes and contrast options. Okay, this is a too broad option again, guys, and many of you might have selected this option. And the reason why this option is incorrect, first of all, there is a superlative called all. Now, it is questionable whether all the app releases will need a configurable font size or contrast options, because some of the app releases might be improvements to the backend, improvements to the cybersecurity technical layer of the application, which does not have any sort of relevance to font size and contrast options, because the end users does not see what happens as a software update in the backend, right? However, configurable font sizes and contrast options, that is debatable because the app might cater to a lot of people who might have vision impairment and who might not have vision impairment, and what kind of font size, what kind of contrast options you will go for that. Okay, so that gives you a plethora of options, okay, to choose from. And again, it is not helping the situation to maintain or sort of ponder and think that, okay, what actions could I take to sort out such kind of issues in the future? Again, too broad option. So that is why option B is incorrect. Let's look at option C. Establish a comprehensive usability testing environment that simulates real user scenarios for developers. Okay. Now, on the face of it, it looks like a good option. It talks about establishing a testing environment, you are testing the application which simulates real user scenarios. The question is, are you doing that for the elderly customers or are you doing that for your developers? Now, the question is, if someone is looking at the application and giving a proxy of your elderly customers, you first need to question whether that is a correct proxy of your elderly customers or not, because a developer might not have the vision impairment, might be quite young. The testing which that developer will be doing, keeping the end user in mind and not representing the actual end user, might be quite different from the actual scenario. Option C is too broad an option, but let's look at option D and come back to option C in a second. Option D is arrange for actual elderly customers, very important. To test prototypes, again, links back to our concept of MVP or minimum viable product, or MMF or minimal marketable feature that we have learned in question number 2 or 3 in today's session. And incremental releases in realistic settings. Okay, so that is a very, very comprehensive option, and the correct answer to this question is option D, which is to arrange for such kind of prototype testing or a prototype testing exercise for actual elderly customers, because then you have the real-time feedback of your actual end users and you do not do a simulation based on what you think might be the response of your end users, because here you are actually not using your end users, you are using some simulation for your developers who might not be able to comprehend the actual end user requirements regarding font sizes, right? So option C is a very close option, but incorrect answer choice for all the reasons that we have discussed, and the correct answer to this question is option D.
I hope you liked the session, guys. Please press the like button and subscribe to this channel if you really found this session helpful for your PMP exam preparation. Also, do not get demotivated if you have scored less, okay? Remember, the key is to analyze and learn from your mistakes and course correct now so that you do not get caught out during the actual PMP exam, okay? Thank you for watching, and I will see you again in the next video.